Let us put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. I read the first line of the Psalm 37:7. This is the Psalm of David from the Living Bible. Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for him to act. Our God and Father in heaven, these are very trying times for us as a nation. It is difficult to be still when there are more questions than answers. It is difficult to be patient when grief is overwhelming and the sense of loss. It's difficult to be still when there are more questions than answers. It is difficult to be patient when grief is overwhelming and the sense of loss does not seem to allow you, Filipinos in areas of conflict who have also lost loved ones. Divine wisdom for our leaders. We desire peace with justice. We ask for peace with dignity. In the name of Jesus, the Lord.
The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honor Cayetano Alan, Peter Companya, Cayetano Pia S., Diego Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Unasan, Garda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar. Senate President Drilon.
17 senators are present. The Chair declares the presence of a quorum. The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense.
And the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, may we acknowledge the welcome to the Senate, the Governor of the province of Antique and her companions today, Governor, and welcome to the Senate, the Governor of the province of Antique and her companions today, Governor Rodora Cadiao. May we ask her to rise to. Mr. President, we also have Barangay Chairperson Shirley Boca together with her barangay officials from Barangay 7.
And
Mr. President, we also have Barangay Chairperson. Certain ships ran aground during Yolanda and they're here to seek the help of senators. May we welcome them to the certain ships ran aground during Yolanda and they're here to seek the help of the senators. May we welcome them to the Senate, Mr. President.
we welcome barangay officials. Make their presence of record.
Mr. President, we have political science students of the University of Caloocan City headed by
These political science students of the University of Caloocan. We make of record and we welcome them in this afternoon session.
Mr. President, I proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business.
Messages from the House of Representatives Belmonte, Kimbo, and Bello III at its conference to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House Number 5283 entitled An Act Strengthening Further the Functional and Structural Organization of the Sandigan Bayan as further amending Presidential Decree Number 1606 as amended and appropriating funds therefore, and Senate Number 2138 entitled An Act Further Amending PD Number 1606 amended.
Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives that on 2015 it concurred with the amendments introduced by the Senate on House Number 3917 entitled An Act increasing the number of members of the Sangguniang Panlunsod of the City of Biñan from 10 of members of the Panlunsod of the City of Biñan from 10 to 12 and separating it from the rest from the first district of the City of Biñan, amending for the purpose sections 10 and 61 respectively of Republic Act number 9740, otherwise known as the Charter of the City of Biñan.
To the archives.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2627, an act protecting seafarers and other workers against ambulance chasing and providing penalties for violation thereof, Senator Sani Angara.
To the hold on. Committee on Labor, Employment and Human Resource Development.
Senate number 2628, an act establishing Polytechnic University Sablayan Campus in the Municipality of Sablayan, Occidental Mindoro, to be known as PUP Sablayan Campus, appropriating funds therefore by Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
Education.
Communications letter from DINEDA dated 21 January 2015 submitting to the Senate the list of foreign retailers selling high-end or luxury goods pursuant to Section 8 of Republic Act Number 8762, otherwise known as the Retail Trade Liberalization Act of 2000.
Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Economic Affairs.
Letter from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas submitting to the Senate the report to Congress on public sector, publicly guaranteed private sector foreign loans approved by the BSP in the fourth quarter of 2014 and the entire 2014 pursuant to Section 20, Article 7 of the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines.
Economic Affairs, Finance.
Committee report number 98, pursuant to Section 20, Article 7 of the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines.
Economic Affairs, Finance.
Committee report number 3, submitted jointly by a local housing board in all cities and 1st to 3rd, 2626, with Senators Ejercito Estrada and Joseph Victor Ejercito as authors thereof, entitled An Act Creating a Local Housing Board in All Cities and 1st to 3rd class municipalities, providing for its powers and functions and for other purposes, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 541, 658, and 1481, sponsor Senator Joseph Victor, directing the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Food to assess and review in aid of legislation the rice sufficiency policy of the Philippines in order to address reported problems in the agriculture industry by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Agriculture and Food.
Yes, resolution number 1152 condemning the brutal execution of Japanese journalist. Yes, resolution number 1152 condemning the brutal execution of Japanese journalist Kenji Goto by purported in Syria and expressing her deepest condolences to Japanese people by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Committee on Rules.
Yes, resolution number 1153 expressing the concern of the Senate that joblessness has country by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr.
Labor and Relations, Human Resources Development. The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
Suspended for 1 minute. Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2626 under Committee Report number 98 for special order.
So transferred.
With the consent of the Senate and our colleagues, Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2626 and
Consideration of Senate Bill 2626 and the Committee Report number 9. Senate Bill 2626 and the Committee of the Measure.
Senate Bill number 2486 under Committee Report number 91. An act exempting, Senate Bill number 2626 under Committee Report number 98, an act creating a local housing board in all cities and 1st to 3rd class municipalities, providing for its powers and functions and for other purposes.
Mr.
Majority
President,
Leader.
I move that we recognize Senator J.V. Ejercito to measure.
Senator Ejercito is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Good afternoon. This afternoon, it is my privilege to sponsor a bill that recognizes the state's commitment to make available, affordable, and decent housing and programs for Filipino families. I refer to Senate Bill number 2626 under Committee 98, otherwise known as the Local Housing Board Act of 2015. The problem of informal settlers is no longer the problem of Metro Manila, Cebu, and Davao alone. Almost all key cities and municipalities have this predicament. This is the rationale why should be pursued seriously by local government units. We want to make sure this time that all local governments take the problem or the need of housing. Local government units play a crucial role in the of socialized housing. Hence, it is imperative that local housing boards be mandatorily established in LGUs in order to empower them to implement housing projects in their respective localities. Several LGUs have in fact established their own local housing board. The City of San Juan, in their desire to provide decent housing to informal settlers living in danger zones, was able to accomplish their goal with the local housing board. Right now,
Excuse
Mr.
me. Can we have some can we have some order in the hall, please? Can we have some order in the hall? The chair can hardly hear the sponsorship speech. With the permission of the chamber, we declare 1 minute. Maupo lang sila, ho. Session is resumed. May we request order as the Senate President can hardly hear the sponsorship speech.
Thank you, Mr. President. Going back, local government units play a crucial role in the provision that local housing boards be mandatorily established in LGUs in order to empower them to implement housing projects in their respective localities. Several LGUs have in fact established their own local housing board. Like the City of San Juan, for example, Mr. President, to provide decent housing to informal settlers living in danger zones, was able to accomplish their goal with the local housing board. Right now, the City of San Juan is building medium-rise socialized housing for the poor, in cooperation with the National Security and the City Social Welfare, the new community for them. How all local governments have this. The local of 2015 thus seeks to create local special bodies in 100 cities and in at least 700 first municipalities across the Philippines. Author of this measure, Mr. President, allow me to present the Philippines. As principal author of this measure, Mr. President, allow me to present local housing boards' 3 salient features in the article of social justice and human rights, to wit, the undertaking to establish a continuing program of urban land reform and housing, to respect the urban or rural poor dwellers to be evicted in a just and humane manner, and the observance of the right of the people and their organizations to effective and reasonable participation at all levels, social, political, and economic decision-making. In recognizing these mandates, the local housing board shall be granted power to function as a policy-making body that shall formulate, develop, and recommend policies to the Sanggunian on the provision of decent and affordable housing and resettlement areas, and on the observance of the right of the underprivileged and homeless to just and humane eviction and demolition. Second, The local housing board shall encourage the participation and contribution of various stakeholders from the government and people's organizations. The board is hence set up with the participation of the mayor and vice mayor as chairperson and vice chairperson, respectively, member of planning and development officer, and the city or municipal engineer. The Sangguniang chairperson of the Committee on Housing and Urban Development or its equivalent, a representative from the housing agencies as designated by the Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council or its members, together with representatives from the private organizations engaged in subdivision and housing development operating in the city and or municipality. People's organization and non-government organizations operating in the city or municipality, and a representative from the Presidential Commission or PCUP. Third, Mr. President, in the establishment of the Local Housing Board comes along the creation of the Local Housing Office in all cities and municipalities, which shall become a regular fixture under the local government unit and shall primarily serve as the principal arm of the Local Housing Board in preparing the local shelter plan, in formulating comprehensive land use plans, overseeing and coordinating government activities related to housing matters, such as cases of evictions, demolitions, and relocation, and enforcing that housing laws, programs, and policies are in place and actions and relocation, and enforcing that housing laws, programs, and policies are in aim to prevent bureaucratic, establish effective practices aimed at expediting official transactions, avoid slow decision-making and government inaction on housing matters, and at the same time, institute. These 3 points, Mr. President, to be brought about by the Local Housing Board Act of 2015 are aimed to transform and address the housing and urban development needs of cities and municipalities nationwide. Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, the country's massive population and its concentration in cities, arising concerns in urban development and land use, begs for the establishment of the Local Housing Board. It has long been set aside and archived in the legislature for 20 years. It is high time that we pass this landmark bill to archive in the legislature for 20 years. It is high time that we pass this landmark bill to arm local governments in their effort to maximize their lands and attain their fullest development.
Thank you, Senator Ejercito.
1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Suspended for 1 minute. Bossing. Thanks a lot.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we open the period for interpellations for Senate Bill number 2626 under Committee Report number 98.
Period of interpellation is in order. We once more recognize the principal sponsor, Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
Mr. President, upon consultation with the sponsor and to give opportunity to our colleagues to formulate the questions, we will continue on Monday. Therefore, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 26 to give opportunity to our colleagues to formulate the questions. We will continue on Monday. Therefore, I move that we suspend consideration number 2486 under Committee Report number 91. This is the bill on the carriage of container vans, Mr. President.
Senate consideration of Senate Bill 2486 is in order.
The parliamentary status, Mr. President, of the measure is that we're in the period of interpellations. I was also informed that there are no questions to be posed by that we close the period for interpellations.
The period of Senate Bill 2486 is hereby terminated as there is no objection from any member of the chamber.
In consultation with the sponsor, Senator Aquino, the committee amendments will be done on Monday, and if the members are ready to propose their individual amendments, he will be ready to consider them on Monday, Mr. President.
Consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
Suspended for 1 minute.
take this opportunity instead of writing a letter and instead of a privileged speech. May I just take this opportunity to ask, request, possible, beg the Committee on Public Order to invite the able-bodied or recuperated survivors of the Mamasapano massacre on Monday, that they be the first resource persons, because we could start on page 1 if that is the case. So may I told the chairman earlier, and she said that it would be, she would accept it if we could manifest it on the floor so that it could be referred also to her committee. I think they will be the best persons to answer if we want to really start the inquiry on page 1. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, no objections to that, and if the minority leader would accept an amendment, an addendum, that the military and that the AFP and PNP also submit to us the reports that they have already submitted by Friday. Because if we're going to have the hearing on Monday at dun palang ibibigay yung report, it will take us time to read. But the AFP has already stated yesterday in the House of Representatives that they have already submitted the report. So maybe through the chairperson, and be prepared for the hearing. Thank you, Minority Leader, and thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, if I may, on a related on the subject raised by the Minority Floor Leader, I am in fact I have written to Senator Grace Poe, Chairman of the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, specifically a request for some of the survivors and some documentary evidence. So I would like to manifest that we are in accordance with the suggestion of the Minority Floor Leader. As a matter of fact, many of the survivors have been in touch with me directly and asking that they be given a chance to speak. But I hope I am not jumping the gun here, but it is also their request that much of their testimony be made in executive. Dahil nag-aalangan sila, I'm hoping that the floor leader is in agreement with me here that we must do whatever it is that we can, be it an executive session, be it a private meeting, be it an open public hearing, whatever it is that whatever it is that we need to do para na makausap natin sila at makapagsalita sila nang hindi sila natatakot na babalikan sila sa kanilang maging testimonya. So I think that we are in concurrence when it comes to this issue. Just a manifestation, Mr. President.
Mr. President, before we close on that matter, Senator Honasa.
Senator Honasa is recognized.
Mr. President, may I add to the proposal of the acting Minority Floor Leader the amendments of the Majority Floor Leader and the comments entered into the record by the distinguished gentleman from Ilocos. Mr. President, generally, the source of information of the citizenry now are media reports, which to my mind, cannot be classified as official reports. Whatever implications there are definitely national security implications, there are constitutional implications, there are legal, political, and even religious implications. That's why the reasonable starting point is from the ground up. It is my understanding that there is adequate documentation that must be consolidated, beginning with a project proposal with a proponent, an operational plan, an after-incident report, an after-encounter report that covers the entire gamut of government instrumentalities on the ground, including what I presume is a report from the municipality, the local government units, and the barangay, which need to be consolidated as a basis or as a starting point. The other more serious implication is if we allow this to continue unmanaged, I can assume that we cannot control the audience I am sure that the so-called enemies of the Republic, not to mention other countries which would develop some interest in the present situation, would be monitoring this. And I think it is prudent for us not only to do this correctly, but to do this well because of the various complex implications. I submit, Mr. President, to the better judgment and the collective wisdom of the Chamber. Thank you, Mr. President.
I associate myself with the views of Senator Honasan. Very well said. Our armed personnel should be very careful in making statements in public other than those in official investigations. Anyway, yes, Senator.
Mr.
Grace,
President,
Senator Grace Poe is recognized.
I take notice and I appreciate the manifestations of our colleagues regarding the coming hearing on Monday. We have a lot at stake here, and we will have to be handling it with utmost care. And also, I would like to take note that I would also like to take note of the suggested invited guests. May I request that they submit any additional names if our colleagues deem it necessary for us to invite these individuals, to please submit it as soon as possible so we can send out the invitation. But for the survivors, I'd like to note that we invited Christopher Lalen and Train, who were both also on the ground when it happened. And also, we have reports from the AFP and the PNP that we will present. However, Mr. President, with regards to having certain topics discussed in executive session, we will determine that on the day itself with the consensus of the other members of the committee that will hear it, because what we need to be careful is that we are protecting the country and our national interest and not just to protect certain individuals. So we will be very careful in using executive session as a means to determine the truth.
May the chair know if there are representatives of the MILF who were invited?
Yes, Mr. President. We have invited Mr. Iqbal to be present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, may I just add to the manifestation that I'd like to also be associated with the statement of Senator Honasan and with the Senate President. And our understanding of the call for transparency, of course, is the responsibility of the Senate to also balance this with the security of the state. No? For example, we may ask what is the response time needed to coordinate, but that answer may not be given in public because then the enemies of the state would know the answer and would be able to prepare. So there are, in fact, many matters that have to be discussed in executive session. And in fact, when the reports are given to us as requested, the military or the police may label it as confidential, and it will be the responsibility of the individual senators to keep that confidentiality or to make sure that this doesn't leak even to their staff. Having said that, to keep the senators in the dark and the danger of people perceiving a cover-up is as valid as the national security concern. So I guess, Mr. President, it is incumbent upon us to balance the two. No? And I'm sure the President of the Senate, the President of the Republic, and no one in this country wants a cover-up. So we will do our best, Mr. President, to balance the interests. So may I thank our colleagues for that manifestation, and I think we are in good hands with the chairperson of the Committee on Public Order, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we also recognize the presence of Pre-Law Society from the De La Salle University, Dasmariñas, based in Dasmariñas, Cavite, headed by Dr. Jose Ames Rosina. May we ask them to stand up to be recognized?
The Pre-Law Society from De La Salle University, Dasmariñas, Cavite, headed by Dr. Jose Rosina, is recognized, and their presence is made of record.
Mr. President, we also have the JCI San Juan from Pinaglabanan. The Board of Directors are here, led by President Abby David. May we ask them to rise to be recognized?
The presence of the JCI San Juan Pinaglabanan Board of Directors, led by Abby David, President, is hereby made of record.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2401, under Committee Report number 75. This is the Youth Development and Empowerment Bill, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Sir President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we're in the period of individual amendments, and when we suspended yesterday, the Senate President had a question addressed to the sponsor. So may we now recognize Senator Marcos to address the question of the Senate President.
Senator Marcos is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then to our discussion in yesterday's session, we have formulated an amendment to the SK Reform Bill, which would attend or which would remedy the perceived differences that were implied in the previous version between national and local governments. And I think, as the Senate President will remember, we went even further to include appointed positions. And so the wording would be, we would change.
Page 8.
We are in page 8, line 20. Line 23 would change the word related to insert the phrase within the second civil degree of consanguinity or affinity. Before I move for those amendments, sir, if I may go through and to do them all, that is on subject on what we have discussed is an amendment that we are proposing at some point on page 8A, line 24A, where we will remove the phrase within the second civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, and in lieu thereof insert the phrase or to any appointed government official or employee classified as salary grade 22 or higher under the Compensation and Position Classification Act of 1989, who is holding office in the same province or highly urbanized city or independent city where the barangay where he or she seeks to be elected is situated.
So can the sponsor read the new provision now, starting on line 23 on page 8? How does it read now?
Line 23 within. Ito. Line 23 will then read, after turpitude, and must not be related within the second civil degree of consanguinity or affinity to any incumbent elected national officials or to any incumbent elected provincial, city, municipal, or barangay official in the locality where he or she seeks to be elected, or to any appointed government official or employee classified as salary grade 22 or higher under the Compensation and Position Classification Act of 1989, who is holding office in the same province or highly urbanized city or independent city where the barangay where he or she seeks to be elected is situated. And so we have tried to accommodate all of the discussion that we had amongst our colleagues yesterday's session, Mr. President.
All right.
However, Mr. President, before I move for its inclusion as a amendment to the SK Reform Bill, it's my understanding that the acting minority floor leader has some questions on exactly this point. So I would like, with the permission of the chair, to yield to the minority floor leader on this matter.
The minority floor leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I was thinking about our discussion last night, and I was afraid that we might be. I am pertaining to this particular provision of the SK Reform Act. We might be preempting the larger debate on the issue of anti-political dynasty. We are, let me put it this way, Mr. President. Ayaw natin, at ito ang sentimento ng karamihan, ayaw natin na ang nagiging SK yung anak nung barangay captain. Hindi po ba? Yun ang talagang major issue
That actually, that was the criticism leveled at the SK.
Correct.
And in our studies, mukha namang talagang prevalent yung ganung klaseng practice. And in fact, that is why we felt we had to address the issue.
All right. Now, in say a city like Manila, then let's take a city which is smaller or a smaller number of barangays. Quezon City. In Manila, there are 896 barangays. In Quezon City, there are 140 barangays. If we prevent the son of the mayor from being SK, isang barangay lang yung affected siya Isang barangay lang yung affected niya, and most probably, the barangay will be happy to have as an SK representative the son of the mayor. Pero what we are going to do with this provision now, madadamay natin lahat. Madadamay natin lahat ng kamag-anak within the second degree of consanguinity ng mga mayor, vice mayor, governor, vice governor, appointed, pati city treasurer or city secretary, city administrator. Ang talagang ayaw lang naman natin, yung barangay captain, gagawing SK yung anak niya. So, my appeal to the distinguished gentleman whose younger sister was the original founder of the KB.
Excuse me po, elder sister.
No, I always thought she was younger.
I know many people thought that, but
may I ask the...
Magagalit sa akin ang aking kapatid, pero
no,
in the interest of good order, I would just like to put on record that, in fact, Governor Amy Marcos is my elder sister.
I'm sorry then, I was about to ask the Secretariat to send a copy of the journal on this portion to the Governor of Ilocos Norte. But anyway, I would like to appeal to the distinguished gentleman to consider this before you really close that particular provision. Baka pwede barangay official na lang. Ang talagang ibawal natin, yung barangay official lang, huwag natin idamay lahat because we will go into the larger issue of anti-political dynasty. And baka lumaki ang problema.
One of the reasons that we feel that we have to include the higher officials, ang aming original na pinag-usapan ay hanggang province, hanggang city, there is a distinct possibility kapag anak ng mayor or kahit na anak ng governor ang naging SK ay ipaglalaban ng kanyang pamilya na siya ay maging ex officio member unang-una sa municipality dahil sa ABC at magiging ex officio member hanggang sa Sangguniang Panlalawigan again dahil ma-elect ng ABC. Kaya the observation that it will only affect that barangay is not necessarily the case because if influence is exerted by a higher official, then it is entirely possible that an SK member will then become an ex officio member not only of the city municipality but in fact all the way up to the province. That is the reason why ang original na limit namin, na limitation doon sa anti-dynasty provision was until the province, until we had that discussions po yesterday. So that is the reason why we had originally extended it to the provincial level until the chair brought up the different issues that were surrounding that proposed amendment, Mr. President.
Mr. President, yes, I recognize the point of the gentleman. As a matter of fact, I was in agreement even yesterday. But on second thought, and while I was thinking of it last night, listening to what you said now, perhaps we can make a provision disallowing the SK chairman who is related to the governor or to the mayor to be in the Sanggunian instead of preempting everyone else. Baka po pwede natin tingnan yung wisdom nitong idea na to sapagkat talagang barangay lang ang problema naman natin in the first place eh. Baka makagawa tayo ng provision dito na ipagbawal natin na yung SK maging council representative or provincial board representative. Isa lang yun eh. Isa lang yun. Like as I said, Manila, 896 barangays. 895 na barangays, ipagbabawal na natin ang mga kamag-anak ng mga public at saka elected officials na maging SK. Samantalang isang barangay lang talaga ang wino-worry natin. So, and then in Quezon City, 140. Baka pwede pong ano.
Well, Mr. President,
Isipan niyo to.
I leave it to the legal luminaries of the body, but in my understanding, there is no way that we can only apply a certain limitation on the basis of their relationship with a higher official. In other words, yung sinasuggest ng ating mabutihing minority floor leader, hindi yata kayang isa batas na sabihin dahil anak ka, kahit pinayagan ka maging SK, hindi ka maaring tumakbo bilang ABC ng city, ng municipality, at saka ng probinsya. So, although the sentiment that is behind that suggestion is well appreciated, I do not know if there is a legal way to do it, that would be proper in the sense that again the issues of equal protection are attended to.
Mr. President, may be recognized.
Yes, Senator Herso, with the permission of the
Yes, with the
Senator Marcos and Senator Soto.
No
Certainly,
problem.
because Senator J.V. Ejercito was actually in our discussions the proponent of this provision on the anti-dynasty.
Yes, with the indulgence of the sponsor.
I yield to the floor to the proponent of this provision on the anti-dynasty.
One of the more salient and the more important features of the Reform Act is anti-dynasty provision. And actually, Mr. President, Mr. Minority Leader, a lot are now a lot of those who are really against or are for the abolition of the SK system are now excited because with this anti-dynasty provision, we are the proponents of the SK reform say that we are really for reform, so that we are really serious in our reform for the system. And going back to the discussion a while ago, it's a good suggestion from the minority leader that only the barangay captain, son or children would be
barangay officials.
Barangay officials. So, but Mr. President, Mr. Minority Leader, when I was still in the House of Representatives, son or children
Barangay
would be
officials. Barangay officials.
Barangay officials. So, but Mr. President, Mr. Minority Leader, and when all the SKs were there, the federation were there to represent the SK, and I remember asking which of them were related to any barangay officials. Probably about 50% raised their hands. And then I asked also which of them were related to any local officials, meaning a mayor, governor, vice mayor. About 40. So about 9 out of 10 are related really to any local officials. So not only barangay officials. Going back, doon po sa concern ni Minority Leader that only barangay officials, kids will be disallowed because Mr. President, also the reason why we included the local officials, meaning mayors and governors, because of the ex officio members. So because the federation, SK Federation President will become automatically an ex officio member of the city or municipal council or the provincial council. So it's a coveted position, no? Kaya nga isa na rin sa ating paraan para matanggal po 'yon, no? Yung influence peddling, power play, because it's one seat. The mayors and the governors likewise want to get, sometimes they feel their sons or daughters, no, so that they will have one seat in the provincial or the city or municipal council. So that's I just wanted to let our minority leader know the rationale behind why we wanted to include the municipal, city, and the provincial officials. Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, Mr. President, I do also understand the point. But kung tutuusin po, kung gusto talaga ng mayor or ng governor na hawak niya yung SK na uupo, kahit di niya kaano-ano yun, kaya niyang gawin yun. Kahit hindi niya kamag-anak yun. That is the problem. Well, anyway, that is my suggestion. I hope it is considered. At the worst, may I be allowed to suggest I will, if you want this voted on now, I will not object. But if I may be allowed to craft a phrase that might cover my suggestion, especially when it comes to the sanggunian panglungsod or pangbayan and the sangguniang panlalawigan ang maapektuhan. Baka po pwede kung humabol pa later on in this particular, but let me rephrase that. But if you're willing to wait, I can try to give you a suggestion on Monday. If you're not going to accept it, then so be it, Mr. President. But
Well, Mr. President, I would just like, before I respond to Senator Soto, I would just like to add to the comments of Senator Ejercito, in that it is only natural for us to expect that if a governor's son or daughter is elected as an SK in barangay, that ipaglalaban nila ng husto na magiging youth representative yan sa municipality at magiging youth representative yan sa board, dahil ang governor magkakaroon ng karagdagang isang boto na tiyak doon sa kanyang provincial board. The same thing kung ang mayor, ang anak niya ay naging SK, ay nakakatiyak tayo, ipaglalaban niya yan na siya ang magiging ex officio youth representative ng sangguniang bayan o sangguniang panlunsod. Kaya this is the influence that we are trying to avoid. Now, the dynamic that Senator Soto is describing, na nagbabata ng tao para maging kahit na hindi niya kamag-anak, that is the natural process of politics. Dahil kukuha ka ng kakampi mo, although barangay elections and barangay matters are meant to be non-partisan, naturally, you try to have your own kaalyado to have a vote, para may mas maraming kakampi ka. So that is, I don't think that is a process that we would like to avoid. It is the normal process of politics during elections. So I do not think that that's something that we have to guard against, is the point that I'm trying to make. What we have to guard against, and what we are trying to do with this anti-dynasty provision, is that the influence that will be exerted by a higher official so that their sons or daughters will be elected as ex officio members in their sanggunians, that kind of undue influence is what we are trying to avoid. And that is something that, and the promotion of the continuing dominance of one family in an area is also what we are trying to avoid. So, kung ang higher official, meron siyang naging kaibigan na SK, youth representative, there is nothing wrong with that. That is again, gumagawa tayo na lahat naman pag eleksyon, nagbubuo ng grupo at yung grupong yan ay pinaglalaban, kinakampanya para manalo ang mga kasama. So, I do not feel that there is a danger in that, although I do feel that there is a danger in the suggestion that the recognized dynamic that a parent who is holding a high position will exert all influence possible, not only because it is their child who is in position or who is in the election, but also because it will add to their percentage within the board, whatever the board is, if it is the provincial board or the city or municipal. So that is my response to the gentleman from Quezon City.
All right, Mr. President. In that case, we are practically saying that if that is the position, we're practically saying that the national officials have nothing to do with that because hindi naman sila pwedeng makialam sa provincial board or pambayan. What do you think?
Well, I can,
President?
halimbawa, to use an example we need closer to home. I am sure any of the senators here can exert influence in their home provinces and home communities when it comes to these elections of SK or any other election for that matter. In my own experience, I came from local government, and so what happens in local government is of great interest to me, and I continue to be involved in the discussions and the political political decisions that are being made, simply because I am a constituent of my province, Ilocos Norte, and I have a say in that as a former governor and as a senator. So again, that is something that we want to minimize. It is not something that I think we can remove completely, but certainly we want to minimize to give an opportunity for those who have not really been involved in government to be involved in government, to encourage them that kasi maraming nangyayari, sinasabi ng SK, hindi na ako tatakbo dahil ang magiging kalaban ko anak ni Mayor, wala akong panalo diyan. That is the precise situation that we want to avoid. And so to encourage people who are not in government to come into young people to come into government. Kaya naman para we have a vibrant discussion, we have a vibrant debate when it comes to the different issues in the local community. So that is why in our discussions yesterday, while the original proposal was only to include the barangay, it was then extended all the way to the provincial officials. We also included now the national officials and even the appointed officials. Kaya't dun nga tayo nahirapan kung paano natin, where we will delineate where will we draw the line as to where the appointed officials' children should be allowed, which of the appointed officials will allow their children to run for SK. So, the mayor or the governor. So again, that is something that we are trying to avoid, and that is what we have tried to attend to. This is the issue that we have tried to remedy with these amendments that I had read out and hope to propose.
Well, anyway, Mr. President, I believe that we have discussed it discussively, and therefore I just leave it into the hands of the chairman if he will accept my proposal or not, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I feel that we must stick to our guns on this issue, and we will to include not only local barangay and local officials, but including national and appointed officials. And as I had read it in my what will be my proposed amendment, it will be to salary grade 22 and above.
What would be salary grade 22, Senator Marcos?
The reason we do have salary grade 22 because the principals of schools are salary grade 22, and the conduct of the elections involve, as we well know, the DepEd, and that is why we brought it all the way down to salary grade 22.
Thank you.
So with that, I am sorry to have to say that we do not accept the proposed amendments of the minority floor leader, and we feel that this the formulation, as I have read it, is the one that will actually give meat to the anti-dynasty intention.
May I just then register my abstention on this particular provision when it is
Thank
voted
you.
on, Mr. President?
Thank you, Senator Soto. Well, okay. What does the sponsor now?
Mr. President, if I may, I would like to then propose the additional individual amendments to the.
Can you restate that the particular amendment?
I will do that, Mr. President. So the individual amendments are these. On page 8, line 23, after the word related, insert the phrase within the second civil degree of consanguinity or affinity. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none.
On the same page and line, after the word elected, insert the phrase national officials or any incumbent elected provincial. So moved, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, approved. Record the abstention of minority leader.
On page 8A, line 24A, delete the phrase within the second civil degree of consanguinity or affinity, and in lieu thereof, insert the phrase or to any appointed government official or employee classified as salary grade 22 or higher under the Compensation and Position Classification Act of 1989, who is holding office in the same province or highly urbanized city or independent city where the barangays where he or she seeks to be elected is situated. So moved, Mr. President.
Record the abstention. With the abstention of Senator Soto, the amendment is carried.
That is the extent of the individual amendments that I intend to propose, Mr. President. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Senator Soto,
may I be allowed another individual amendment, to propose another individual amendment?
Please
to the
proceed.
Gentleman. Yes, may I move that we reconsider a previous amendment that was accepted. This is the age qualification. I understand original
can we have the
page 8 and
page,
9, page 9.
Page 9, please proceed.
Line
Yes.
4, line 4.
Line 4.
4. Originally, the bill that was reported out by the gentleman said that the age qualification should be from 18 to 24. And I understand that he accepted an amendment that it be stretched to 27. I would like to ask that the gentleman reconsider that it be brought back to 24. The reason, Mr. President, is that we should have a layering in the age qualification. Pagka 25 and above, hindi na kabataan yun, Mr. President, to be very blunt about it. Second, 25 years old, he's qualified already to be congressman. That is the age limit of a congressman. 35 for a senator and 40 for a president or a vice president. So why will we allow a 27-year-old to be SK? Let us bring it back to 24, Mr. President.
Mr. President, first of all, on the statement that 25 and above is no longer young or youth, I would have to point to the experience and the practice of several other countries. In fact, where up to 35 is considered part of the youth. 35 countries in ASEAN are 30. The United Nations uses the age 30 for the cutoff in terms of the youth. And so we are trying to put ourselves in consonance with those other practices, so that when it comes to international relations between our youth movement and the youth movement of other countries and the United Nations, that we are, as I said, in consonance with their definitions. And I think that the experience of the other countries speaks well of that kind of classification. But that is why, in fact, the line,
May I know from the gentleman, in those other countries that he mentioned, or a president or a vice president, Mr. President?
There are limits as well, but the limits do cross. The gentleman has explained. 25 years old qualifies you to be a congressman. It is a similar situation. I do not. There are situations where members of parliament, for example, need to be 30 or can be younger, and youth is still recognized as 30. So that kind of overlap, which is being illustrated by the gentleman, is present in those. And nevertheless, it seems to work. It seems to work well. I would just like to remind the body that the reason that we put the age higher was to answer the valid criticism. It turns out, a valid criticism, that the young people 15 to 17 are in school and cannot attend to their jobs and their duties as SK officials. Furthermore, they are unable to sign documents. They are unable to enter into contracts. They are unable to because they are not yet in the age of majority. They are not able to do many of the things that are required of them as SK officials, and have to depend on the elders in the barangay community and the barangay officials for those functions. So that is just to give a background. That is the reason that was a very important part of our deliberations, and that is why this is the result of those deliberations.
I am in full agreement on the 18 years old, Mr. President, but I would like to insist that the gentleman consider a maximum of 24 years old, 18 to 24. His original committee report, if possible, Mr. President.
May I have a minute suspension, Mr. President?
Suspended for 1 minute.
Thank you. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to clarify that what we are talking about here is is the age of the entire katipunan ng barangay or just elected officials? Or rather, prospective candidates. I beg your pardon. Prospective candidates or the entire katipunan ng kabataan?
Candidates, Mr. President.
Candidates.
Candidates.
In which case, Mr. President, we accept the amendment that's proposed by the gentleman.
All right. There's a motion for a reconsideration, which will now bring back line 4 on page 9 to the...
I stand corrected on that page, Mr. President. I'm not too sure about that. The page...
Can we please point it out?
Kasi
correctly?
candidates lang ang pinag-uusapan eh. Candidates lang eh. Could you give... we have a 1 minute suspension.
1 minute suspension.
Hindi ako dun.
Section?
Ito, section 10, page 8.
He pointed out to page 9.
Oo nga eh, magkamali ako eh.
Page 8. Oh, ito.
Section 10. Section 10, yeah.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand corrected. I should have pertained to page 8, section 10.
Page 8,
Line-
section 10, line...
Line 20A.
28.
20,
A. 20 and 20A.
20, 20A, and
Yeah.
21. The amendment, if I got the minority leader correctly, is to delete on line 20, 27 in words and
27.
figures.
Oo.
On line 20A, years of age at the time of the election, delete that phrase. Remove the bracket on line 20A,
Yes.
and on line 21,
Correct. Remove
delete the bracket.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, Mr. President. Precisely correct.
Very well. We accept, Mr. President.
The amendment is accepted.
So have to amend
Page
on
9.
line
Page 9.
on page 9 from on line 4.
Yes.
Yes.
The same. We will delete the words, the name and the words and numbers 27, and restore 24 years of age at the time of.
In words and numbers.
Any objection? Hearing none. Approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to thank the gentleman and the sponsors also of the measure for accepting the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other amendment, Mr. Sponsor?
Yes, Mr. President, it has been pointed out to me that on page 1, line 4, we need to change the, on line 4, it still reads Youth Development Empowerment Act of 2014. So the proposed amendment is on page 1, line 4, change the year 2014 to 2015. So moved,
Any
Mr.
objection?
President.
Hearing none. Approved.
That is all, Mr. President.
Mr. Majority Leader?
Sir President, since there are no other proposed individual amendments, I move that we close the period of individual amendments.
Any objection? Hearing none, the period for individual amendments is hereby terminated.
Sir President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 2401 under Committee Report number 75.
Any objection? Hearing none, Senate Bill number 2401 is hereby approved on second reading.
We congratulate the authors and the sponsors, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2401 under Committee Report number 75.
Consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Sir President, just two administrative matters. With the consent of the concerned committee chairpersons and in accordance with our rules, I move to transfer the referral of Senate Bill number 2264, entitled an Act amending Section 8 of Presidential Decree number 910, to allow the financing of energy-related expenses of the Armed Forces of the Philippines in the use of the special fund from the Committee on Finance to the Committee on National Defense and Security. I so move, Mr. President.
Approved.
Secondly, Mr. President, Senate Resolution 1146, introduced by Senator Legarda, was with the title "Commending the Bravery and Heroism of the Philippine National Police Special Action Force (PNP-SAF) operatives who were creation, as well as other contributing factors that led to its unfavorable outcome," was referred to the Committee on Rules. After looking into the resolution and consulting the author that the main intent was to investigate in aid of legislation the circumstances of said incident, I move that it be referred to the Committee on Public Order, Mr. President.
So transferred.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, February 9, 2015.
Session is adjourned until Monday, February 9, 2015, 3 o'clock in the afternoon.